Who are a few of the worst criminals with a heart for crime? Let's find out, starting with number 5, targeted robbery. Patricia McKay, a 68-year-old tourist from New Zealand, met a tragic end during a robbery outside an upscale shopping mall in Newport Beach, California. Her husband, sadly, had to watch the whole thing happen as the couple was targeted by 3 men. These men were later identified as Leroy McCrary, 26, from Compton, and 2 18-year-olds, Malachi Darnell from Los Angeles and Jaden Cunningham from Lancaster. The 3 have since been charged. The McKays were walking outside a Barnes & Noble at Fashion Island Mall when they were suddenly approached by Darnell and Cunningham. Wearing masks, the 2 demanded valuables from the couple, including Mr. McKay's watch. When the men couldn't get the watch because McKay was resisting, they turned their attention to Patricia McKay, who was holding several shopping bags. In the struggle, the robbers dragged Patricia into the parking lot where McCrary, the driver of the getaway car, waited. As Mr. McKay tried to protect his wife, McCrary accelerated the vehicle, striking and running over Patricia, who was then dragged beneath the car for several feet. This brutal act ended her life, leaving Mr. McKay and onlookers in shock. And despite the terrors of the scene, the suspects still didn't end their destructiveness. As they fled, Darnell discharged a weapon at a Good Samaritan who had attempted to intervene. Fortunately, no one was struck by the rounds. The police quickly initiated a high-speed chase that led them across county lines, with the suspect's vehicle reaching speeds of 110 miles per hour. During the high-speed chase, 2 of the suspects, Darnell and Cunningham, jumped out of the car and tried to flee on foot. McCrary, the driver, continued driving but was later found hiding behind trash cans after he abandoned the car, completely exhausted after trying to escape on foot. Of course, all 3 men were caught. Following their arrest, the suspects refused to appear in court, even when ordered by the judge. Their defiance led to video appearances via iPads brought to their cells where none of them spoke. Of course, their refusal to face justice only made people more upset, especially given that McCrary had a pretty robust criminal record. His history included convictions for robbery, burglary, and making criminal threats. Yet, he was free on probation due to a lenient plea deal. The crime sparked widespread anger for obvious reasons, with Newport Beach's mayor, Will O'Neill, condemning the actions of the suspects and criticizing the judicial system that allowed McCrary to remain free. As of the release of this video, the 3 men involved in the tragic passing of Patricia McKay remain in jail and have yet to enter a plea. However, they have been charged and could potentially face the ultimate penalty. We hope that justice does get served and the family gets some measure of peace. We can't imagine what that was like watching something like that happen to a loved one. Please remember that your stuff isn't worth your life. It's just stuff, and people can replace stuff, but they can never replace you. Number 4, a disturbed mind. 29-year-old Tureygua Inaru from Orlando, Florida, jumped into the deep end of the crazy pool without her floaties. Inaru, who was already in jail for threatening to end the lives of her former co-workers at Disney, allegedly took her malicious intentions even further by plotting to have her own parents and grandparents taken out, as well as the state attorney prosecuting her. According to law enforcement, Inaru tried to recruit fellow inmates to carry out the plot, motivated by a $2 million inheritance she claimed she would receive upon her relative's passing. She allegedly offered $50,000 per victim to anyone willing to go through with the plan. The scheme was as twisted as it was horrifying, with Inaru actually providing detailed instructions on how to make the crimes appear as a robbery gone wrong. In addition to targeting her own family, Inaru allegedly also targeted Assistant State Attorney Peter Francis Donnelly, who was prosecuting her case. She apparently wanted to see him suffer, even saying that she didn't care if his family was also targeted. Inaru was so consumed by rage that she said she'd carry out the crimes herself if no one else would. However, her cellmates, rather than accepting her offer, chose to alert a corrections officer instead, because all of this is a lot, even for prison. This led to the sheriff's office sending an undercover detective, posing as an inmate, into Inaru's cell. Despite her initial denials, Inaru later admitted to investigators that she had indeed been plotting to have her family bumped off. She also accused her parents of some inappropriate behavior with her and her siblings during their childhood, although another family member refuted this by suggesting that Inaru really needed some mental help. As a result of the plot allegations, Inaru was charged with some new crimes. During her initial court appearance, she displayed a chilling lack of remorse, actually smirking for whatever reason as she responded to the judge. As of the release of this video, Inaru remains in jail without bond, clearly a disturbed individual facing serious legal consequences. However, why smirk at the judge though? What a weird thing to do. It's as if she wanted to show how cold and uncaring she was, but wanted to show that she was still friendly? Regardless, it's pretty clear she's not mentally all there. Number 3. Unsuspecting Clients. Prince Aduro, a 34-year-old from Westerville, Ohio, was sentenced 8.5 years in prison for wire fraud and money laundering. Oduro, a former employee at JP Morgan Chase, exploited his position at the bank to orchestrate a series of fraudulent schemes that targeted the bank's customers. Starting in 2015, Oduro stole personal information from several Chase customers and used it to create unauthorized PayPal accounts, transferring stolen funds into these accounts before withdrawing the money for himself. And the thing was, Oduro's criminal activities extended beyond his work at the bank. Because why only scam people where he works, right? So Oduro was involved in elaborate online romance scams, convincing victims to send him large sums of money by pretending to be someone in desperate need, such as an American soldier injured overseas or someone with access to a fortune in gold or silver. By March of 2020, Oduro had laundered over $1 million from these scams. Despite being arrested in February of 2022 and pleading guilty in January of 2023, Oduro continued his fraudulent activities while out on bond. One of his more notable schemes involved convincing a widow that her late husband had hidden valuable artwork in Atlanta. She believed the story too, since her late husband had traveled frequently, so she ended up transferring $390,000 to bank accounts under Oduro's control, hoping to retrieve her husband's supposed assets. In total, Oduro's schemes caused nearly $2 million in losses. His actions have led to a court-ordered restitution of approximately $1.8 million. Oduro's crimes were meticulously planned and executed over several years, starting with small-scale thefts at his workplace and escalating to large-scale online fraud. His ability to blend his bank job with illegal activities enabled him to exploit victims across multiple states. One of the more disturbing aspects of Oduro's criminal activities was his persistence. Even after being caught and pleading guilty, he just couldn't resist the urge to continue his scams. This relentless pursuit of easy money showed a deep-seated greed and lack of remorse. After his initial arrest, he conducted another romance scam, leading to an additional $709,500 in losses. His repeated offenses after his arrest highlight not just his greed, but also his willingness to manipulate and deceive vulnerable individuals without a second thought. To make matters just a little worse, a search of Oduro's phone revealed WhatsApp messages where he straight up brags about his illegal activities. He said his schemes were the only business in America where he can make $20,000 a month without getting caught. Of course, he was doing this bragging before he was arrested, so now it's kind of funny. But this attitude, coupled with the scale of his operations, paints a picture of a guy who truly saw crime not just as a means to an end, but as a legitimate career path. The consequences of Oduro's actions have never been severe. As of the release of this video, he's doing 8.5 in federal prison and must pay back nearly $2 million to his victims, which he'll probably never do. Number 2. The Pretend Nurse. Bridget Cleroux, a 52-year-old woman from Canada, became notorious for her decades-long criminal career impersonating various professionals, Frank Abagnale style. She was sentenced to 7 years in prison after posing as a nurse at multiple medical facilities in Ottawa and Vancouver. Her fraudulent actions affected nearly 1,000 patients, many of whom were unaware that they were being treated by someone with no medical qualifications. Cleroux's scheme began to unravel when a nurse at an Ottawa clinic became suspicious of her unprofessional unprofessional behavior. Using the alias Melanie Smith, someone who was an actual RN, Claru intimidated patients and colleagues, raising enough concern for a fellow nurse to investigate her background. It didn't take long to discover that Claru wasn't registered to practice nursing in Ontario, and in fact, wasn't a nurse at all. Further research revealed her true identity and a lengthy criminal record that spanned over 3 decades across North America. Realizing who she was dealing with, the nurse immediately contacted the authorities, leading to Claru's arrest. Her actions weren't isolated incidents either. She had a history of impersonating professionals in various fields, including education and healthcare, in several provinces and U.S. states. Her criminal record includes at least 67 convictions for crimes ranging from forgery to impersonation. Claru managed to secure employment at BC Women's Hospital in Vancouver and Victoria's View Royal Surgical Medical Center by using a fabricated resume that included the credentials and registration number of a real nurse named Melanie Smith. Her deception was so thorough that she manipulated the hiring process, providing false references from email addresses she controlled. Described as having an intimidating presence, which is an attitude you'd want from your nurse, right? Claru administered heavy-duty controlled medications to unsuspecting patients. Despite numerous complaints about her lack of professionalism, she continued to work until her true identity was uncovered in June of 2021, leading to her termination and subsequent arrest. Claru's criminal activities were fueled by her clear desire for attention and admiration, often manifesting in a grandiose style. Her fraudulent actions left a trail of victims, including the real nurse Melanie Smith, who was forced to change her last name to distance herself from Claru's actions. Patients, some of whom received treatment during the critical medical procedures, were left with lasting distrust in the healthcare system. Fortunately, Bridget Claru's life of crime finally caught up with her, but the damage she inflicted on her victims' lives is far from over. As of the release of this video, Bridget Claru is facing a total of 32 charges that span several jurisdictions, reflecting her extensive history of fraudulent and deception. Investigations are outgoing, and it's possible that more charges could be added as further victims come forward. It's weird to think that Claru was busted because she had such a bad attitude and was acting unprofessionally, right? You'd think that if she was trying to convince everyone else she was a nurse, she'd try being a little more low-key and likable, not developing a reputation for being intimidating. But we suppose if her brain was working right, she wouldn't be pulling this stuff in the first place. If you're enjoying this video, be sure to stay tuned and find out how this cop was actually playing for the other team. Number 1. Crime Wave. Molly L. Dutrow, known for her inability to not do crimes, was arrested after leading police on a dangerous high-speed chase in a stolen vehicle filled with illegal substances. But this was just the latest incident to add to her already extensive history of criminal activity, including multiple charges of identity theft and fraud over the years. While working as a food server at a local restaurant, Dutrow stole credit card numbers from customers and used them for personal purchases, with one victim reporting over $600 in unauthorized charges. This initial crime was followed by another theft at a shipping and packaging company, where Dutrow again stole a customer's credit card information and racked up another $650 in fraudulent purchases. Dutrow, who was 21 at the time, was eventually caught and pleaded guilty to second-degree identity theft, which is a felony. Her repeated offenses led the court to revoke her bail, and she was sent to county jail, where she clearly didn't learn her lesson. Molly Dutrow's criminal history took another turn when at 24, she refused to pay a $10 parking fee at the Oyster Bay Oyster Festival. Her refusal somehow escalated into a physical confrontation when she knocked down a parking attendant with her vehicle, causing minor injuries. When police attempted to arrest her, Dutrow resisted and even bit an officer, bruising his hand. Further investigation revealed Dutrow was driving on a suspended license and had the devil's lettuce in her possession. Her criminal record at that point included the previous arrests for identity theft, as well as theft of groceries worth over $1,000 and fraudulently obtaining a paycheck by impersonating a store employee. In this case, Dutrow faced a long list of charges, including resisting arrest, identity theft, and multiple counts of larceny, and her bail was set at $50,000. Years later, Molly Dutrow, now 29, wound up in even deeper trouble on Long Island. After stealing a 2020 Mazda CX-5, Dutrow led police on a dangerous chase through local streets after a license plate reader identified it as a stolen stolen vehicle. Dutro, behind the wheel, refused to stop, instead driving recklessly and even steering into oncoming traffic. In a particularly dangerous moment, Dutro accelerated towards an officer, forcing him to discharge his firearm, which struck the car but caused no injuries. The chase ended with Dutro's arrest, and a search of the vehicle revealed a significant quantity of illegal substances and paraphernalia, surprising no one. Dutro was charged with unauthorized use of a vehicle and fleeing from law enforcement, while her passenger, Randall Hutchinson, also faced multiple possession charges. Dutro's arrest added to her already extensive criminal record, and she was held without bail pending her trial. Given her history of repeated offenses and the serious nature of the new charges, she's expected to face a lengthy prison sentence. The exact details of her sentencing are still pending as her case continues through the legal system as of the release of this video. And hopefully, she actually does some time, because it doesn't sound like this girl is going to be keeping out of trouble for very long if she's let out. Who are some of the most corrupt cops out there? Let's find out, starting with number 7, Yesenia Jimenez. Yesenia Jimenez, a former NYPD officer, faced a federal court conviction on trafficking charges stemming from her involvement in a dealing operation that she and her boyfriend, Louis Soto, had. Jimenez, a 4-year veteran of the NYPD, was assigned to patrol city housing developments in the Bronx and was found to have been running an illicit operation in collaboration with Soto. Their operation extended across the U.S.-Mexico border, trafficking a range of contraband that was distributed from their apartment to buyers in New York and Boston. Authorities had initially become suspicious of Jimenez when her boyfriend's phone number surfaced in connection with a suspected dealer from Queens, New York. The unraveling of Jimenez's double life began when she and Soto were apprehended by DEA agents upon returning from a trip to Massachusetts. The duo was meeting another trafficker at the time. Adding to the situation, Jimenez had her NYPD-issued firearm visibly hanging out of her purse and was carrying $25,000 in cash. When law enforcement raided Jimenez's apartment, they discovered not only hundreds of thousands of dollars in contraband money, but also a substantial quantity of illegal substances. Jimenez tried to claim that she was just on the job, but nobody, including a jury, bought it. So she was convicted following a 1-week trial in a Manhattan federal court. In her conviction, Jimenez was found guilty of conspiring to distribute various substances and using a firearm in furtherance of trafficking. She now faces a mandatory 10-year prison sentence for the conspiracy charges, with the potential for a life sentence. Number 6. William Dickey. William Dickey and his wife Tara Usafero faced charges of misdemeanor shoplifting after allegedly leaving a Lowe's home improvement store without paying. Store surveillance footage clearly captured the incident, showing Dickey, an officer with the Providence, Rhode Island Police Department, pushing a cart filled with insulation worth only $66 past the register without any intention of paying for it. His wife Tara was seen doing the same thing with a window air conditioner worth $379. Really? Risking it all just to save less than $500. Acknowledging their alleged crime, Dickey and Usafero quickly turned themselves into the Warwick Police Department. The fact that Dickey was an officer with the Providence Police Department raised additional concerns. He has since been suspended from his position and is currently the subject of an internal review by his own department. Both individuals were subsequently booked and released with a summons to appear for arraignment in Kent County District Court with charges of misdemeanor shoplifting. It's really weird that he decided to throw his entire career away for less than $500. Maybe his house was just really, really hot, and one more minute of delay was unacceptable. I'd pay for all this, but it's like 85 out, and I just can't take it. Number 5. Mesut Karakas. Mesut Karakas, a former police officer in London, was revealed to be the ringleader of a gang that planned to abduct a bank manager and his spouse in hopes of stealing £100,000. But Scotland Yard, which is the coolest named police force, detectives had other ideas. In conversations recorded by a bug planted in his car, Karakas and his accomplices discussed their intentions in detail. They talked about using sheets to transport the victims and planning about an hour and a half for interrogation. The elaborate plot even included staging a roadwork scene near the victim's residence to serve as a distraction during the kidnapping. When police moved in and arrested Caracas and his gang, they uncovered a trove of incriminating evidence in their homes. Balaclavas, tape, zip ties, ear protection, and a van equipped with fake plates were among the items seized. Caracas and his fellow gang members all faced charges related to the kidnapping plot and its aftermath. Interestingly, there were signs of suspicion surrounding Caracas even before the arrest. He had been suspected of having ties to major criminal groups in London. Doubts were also raised about his conduct when he supposedly injured himself to frame a suspect and later engaged in a fight with some guy outside a pub. Ultimately, Mesut Caracas was sentenced to a prison term of 14 years for his role in the plot. The story is a little old, but still blows us away how corrupt this guy was. He's like a corrupt cop in a movie. It's not like he was just taking bribes or something. This dude was out acting like a straight up villain, just like Alonzo from Training Day. And it's not like it was that much money. Don't get us wrong, £100,000 is still a lot, but splitting it even 50%, it's not like he could ride off into the sunset or something. Number 4, Anthony Maldonado. Anthony Ikeka Maldonado, a former Maui police officer, attempted to bribe a man he basically mugged into not telling on him. The story began with a routine traffic stop. Maldonado, working as a Lahaina patrol officer at the time, pulled over a driver who was alone in the car and struggled with English. During the stop, Maldonado stole around $1,800 from the driver's fanny pack after searching it. The victim later realized the money was missing and reported the theft to the police. As the investigation into the theft unfolded, it came to light that Maldonado, along with 4 others, including fellow police officers, had attempted to bribe the victim to get him to withdraw the complaint. Maldonado's friend approached the victim at his residence and offered him $2,000, which the guy rejected. The victim eventually accepted $1,800, but said it was just to make the guy go away. As if stealing money from the victim during a traffic stop wasn't already dumb enough, attempting to silence the victim through bribery, especially after he had already reported the theft, is even dumber. And then insisting the victim take the bribe after he made it clear he didn't want it is even more dumber. In the aftermath of the investigation and court proceedings, justice was served as Maldonado was sentenced to 2 years in prison. Alongside the prison term, he was placed on 3 years of supervised release and ordered to pay restitution of $1,917.70. Isn't it usually the other way around where people try to bribe police? Maybe someone should give these guys a memo or something. Number 3, John Pisano. Former Lieutenant John Pisano was a 20-year veteran of the NYPD when allegations surfaced about his unauthorized use of overtime to engage in gym sessions instead of performing his duties. Accused of sneaking into the basement gym at one police plaza during work hours, Pisano is said to have exploited the overtime system. Allegedly, Pisano scammed a total of 5 hours and 25 minutes of overtime during 8 exercise sessions, making use of the gym instead of fulfilling his professional responsibilities. On top of his base salary of $121,000, the alleged misuse of overtime pushed his total pay to $176,000, according to information from the Empire Center's See-Through-NY website. Similar patterns were observed in previous years, with his total earnings reaching $177,000 and $173,000. Disciplinary charges filed against Pisano said that he failed to sign in or out of the NYPD gym as required, totaling 92 times. While some incidents occurred during his regular working hours, the lack of proper documentation raised concerns about his commitment to his duties. In addition to this, Pisano was accused of leaving work early on 195 occasions without proper approvals or documentation. Refusing a deal to avoid a departmental trial, Pisano's case highlights the seriousness with which the department views such behavior. If found guilty of the charges, Pisano faces a range of potential consequences, including the loss of 30 vacation days or even forced retirement. But is his misuse of overtime a scam or just a regular thing people do? Realistically, he only took 5.5 hours of overtime to work out, which isn't the same as robbing people or dealing contraband, and certainly wasn't responsible for his jump in annual pay. On the other hand, people in a position of authority are held to a different standard, as they should be. In a job where your integrity very much matters, anything that displays a lack of integrity can have far-reaching consequences. So, even the slightest hint of dishonesty or questionable behavior can erode trust, damaging the reputation not only of the person involved, but the entire organization they represent. Also, did you ever have a boss like that? Or have you done something similar? Give us your take in the comments below. Number 2, Michael Conway. Michael Conway, a former NYPD lieutenant, got himself into some legal trouble for a significant fraud involving Social Security benefits meant for his own children. The accusations revolve around his alleged theft of nearly $140,000 in Social Security benefits over almost a decade. The situation began when Conway qualified for benefits due to a work-related injury he sustained during his time in the NYPD. He allegedly then went on to falsely claim Social Security benefits on behalf of his twin children, who were 8 years old at the time. Shockingly, one of these children is legally blind. Conway's actions extended for nearly a decade, during which he allegedly kept the funds for himself. The fraud finally came to light when Conway's blind son applied for benefits through the Social Security Administration. The teenager discovered that SSA had been providing benefits to both him and his twin for nearly 10 years, and it was revealed that Conway had misappropriated over $138,000. Apparently, Conway's ex-wife and the mother of the twins was also totally unaware of his fraud. She had told the SSA that she had custody of the children and that they had never even lived with Conway. The U.S. Attorney of the Eastern District of New York emphasized the gravity of the situation, stating that Conway had committed a fraud on both his family and the government by unlawfully obtaining and keeping funds intended for his children's care. Conway faced charges of wire fraud, which could potentially result in a prison sentence of up to 20 years. Despite the allegations, he was released on a $200,000 bond. It's one thing to find out he was getting benefits from the children intended to help with their care. We don't always know how people spend their money, so just because his family wasn't aware of the aid didn't mean that the money wasn't going to help the kids. But then to find out his kids never even lived with him, you're a great guy, Michael. We're sure you've done your boys proud. Number 1. Caleb Rogers. Caleb Rogers was a former Las Vegas police officer accused of orchestrating a series of daring casino heists and stealing close to $165,000. At the time of the robberies, Roger was an active duty patrol officer entrusted with upholding the law and maintaining public safety. However, he faced accusations of carrying out 3 casino heists over a 4-month period. In the span of those 4 months, Rogers allegedly made off with nearly $165,000 from robberies at hotel casinos, including the Red Rock Resort and Aliante Hotel. His approach was consistent across the heists. Wearing a face mask, dark clothing, and black latex gloves, he presented a weapon, allegedly a police-issued one, and intimidated cashiers into giving him money. Once the cash was handed over, he concealed it beneath a bag tucked inside his jacket. In his 3rd robbery at the Rio in Las Vegas, Rogers was apprehended by security guards after a brief struggle. Armed with his department-issued revolver and wearing body armor, Rogers threatened cashiers and forcibly took about $79,000. As he attempted to leave the premises, a group of security guards intervened, leading to a tense standoff. After his arrest, Rogers' defense attorney said that the government's evidence tying him to 2 of the robberies is weak. He claimed that the FBI and Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department detectives pressured individuals into identifying him as the suspect in the robberies to hastily close the cases. One striking aspect of the case is that Caleb Rogers' own brother, Josiah Rogers, identified him on video footage captured by casino security cameras during the first 2 robberies. Josiah Rogers received immunity from prosecution for his cooperation. Currently, Caleb Rogers remains in custody awaiting trial for the charges brought against him. Why he'd think it's a good idea to try and rob places that have more cameras than any place else in the world is anyone's guess. Rogers also has a particular way of walking due to a limp, making him even more easily identified. Maybe next time he could just walk in and present his ID before demanding the cash, just to save everyone a little bit of time. Click to watch one of these next videos. Let us know in the comment section which fried chicken chain is better, Popeyes or KFC.